In one brutal attack, the promise of those at the Academy had been all but snuffed out. Hope disappeared with the Waterdavian creatures, and the weight of the terrible sickness pressed down on the city once more. Even more chilling, the whispered rumors of enemies seeking to destroy Neverwinter from within had proved true, though the identity of those responsible for the slaughter was as yet unknown. Still, a flicker of hope yet remained, for not all had died in the attack. From the bloody carnage at the Academy, a survivor had stepped forward, a champion to carry the torch in this darkest hour.
Angelo had gathered everything. Every suit of armor, weapon, bone, and other alchemical ingredient, even goblin ears and more. He knew the backstreet merchants of Neverwinter, and he knew who would buy what. His first day out of the academy had been spent hauling the items across the city core to different areas at different times. Some merchants preferred the nightlife, as it were. The city was in lockdown, so it did limit his buyers a bit, but Angelo made do. He'd been doing this for years, after all. By the end, he'd gotten 5 gold for each complete human skeleton. He knew a very subdued necromancer that preferred to keep his doings on the low, as well as 10 silver per goblin ear or different organ, a variety of amounts for each book, weapon, and armor, the gemstones and other items helping to fill his pockets as well. Olgerd's axe especially had been worth nearly 300 platinum coins. The enchantments had been quite potent. He wished it had been a saber. He could have kept it then, though it was still no replacement for his white fang. By the end of it all, he'd managed nearly 700 platinum coins. Though, translated, this was about 7,000 gold. Though he hadn't yet had time to spend any of it, he had fully intended to do so to upgrade his equipment and be better prepared for what was next. As well, he still had several scrolls, an enchanted dagger, 2 minor enchanted rings, and a weak pair of enchanted boots, as well as 2 partially used wands of fire, 2 bombs, a magic bag with some potions, finally even a rod of frost in a cabinet within Giroux's lab. All in all, a decent haul. The next few days had been spent recovering from his wounds and gathering information on the surrounding area, as well as how far everything had progressed. And now, finally, he had come to the so-called Halls of Justice, which was actually a temple of Tyr, currently modified, and simply approaching the 2 priests he had met a few days prior. Alright, Fenthic approaching him first, just as before. The Helmite doesn't appear to be very talkative, unless he has no choice. Stepping around the bodies and approaching the man, he would allow him to continue.
This is a mistake, Fenthic. We know nothing about this well. How can you so blindly trust them?
And Dessler interjecting instead, saying that they couldn't trust him. And to be fair, if Dessler knew what Erebeth and Lord Nasher knew, they very likely would have an agreement on this. Unfortunately for the Helmite, only the king and his right hand were actually aware of anything in regards to such. Dessler, please. Angelo showed great promise throughout the training at the academy, and has done even more in the week since the attack. Rarely has a recruit shown such potential after such a short training period. If we are to have any hope of finding a cure for the Wailing Death, we need people like Angelo in the service of Neverwinter. Angelo, on the other hand, found it incredibly amusing. After all, that was probably a bunch of lies fed to him. Though it was unusual for the Lady Erebeth to lie to her lover, he supposed. Perhaps the instructors truly had some good words to say about him before their untimely departure from this world. Still, he found it a bit unusual considering the fact that he had slept with half of them and the other half hated him for it. Whatever the case, he decided to brush off such things and instead get down to what he had initially wanted. He, of course, did intend to help Neverwinter, but he never had intended to do it out of pure goodwill. Everything had a price, and that included him. That had been his entire life, and it certainly wasn't going to change now. No, he definitely wouldn't say that he doesn't care, because he does. He wants to find Vengal, and he certainly doesn't enjoy the city suffering from plague, so. But he would definitely make an emphasis on wanting to be paid for his work. He is not a saint. Such callous disregard for the suffering of others. Is this the kind of mercenary we want working for us, Fenthic? I feel like I gave him a deeper voice. Sorry guys, it's been 2 days since I recorded. I was trying to give my throat some time to actually recover. It helped a little bit, but my voice acting is not great in the first place, so if things are different, I humbly apologize. There is nothing wrong with wanting to earn one's fortune in the world, Destler. Rest assured, Angelo, you will be rewarded for your efforts. Please, Angelo, you must forgive Destler. The plague has taken a heavy toll on us all. A toll that even greater in the past week, by the attack on the Academy and the loss of the cure. Let's see. Yeah, he wouldn't just attack Destler. He's not that hot-headed. Now, if he outright insulted him on a personal level, then yeah. But in this case, Fenthic has a point, and Destler is, as he learned earlier, actually helping the city. So he's clearly not a bad guy. He's just an old grumpy guy, which Angelo would not consider a threat or worth the effort. Simply saying that he understands, and these are troubled times. You speak more truth than you know, Angelo. Within the Academy walls, the true horror of the Wailing Death had yet to be felt. The quarantine of Neverwinter has done little to halt the spread of the Wailing Death. Bonfires burned night and day as the city watched dispose of the dead. Yet the corpses are piled ever higher. It is all we can do to contain the chaos and maintain order within the various city districts. Rumors run rampant, and the citizens are on the verge of panic. Yeah, Angelo's curious about what rumors exactly are going on. Because the plague cannot be cured by some of the priests or clerics of the city, some claim it is unnatural, a thing sent by an unknown enemy bent on destroying Neverwinter. The attack on the Academy in these past few weeks have only made things worse, Fenthic. Once people learn how Erebeth lost the cure through her lack of faith. That's better. Destler, I will not have you question the faith of my true love. Erebeth believed the Academy to be a safe haven. Besides, it is not our place to even discuss such things. My Lady Erebeth is in charge, appointed by Lord Nasher himself to stop the Wailing Death. You must talk to her, Angelo, as soon as possible. He does have questions, but he wants to make sure that the job itself is settled and ready before he goes and starts investigating anything else. He's also gathered a fair bit of information already in that week between the Academy prologue and now, so he wouldn't say it nearly this enthusiastically. He's far too calm for that, but he would agree. My Lady Erebeth awaits you in the chamber beyond the north doors. There she works tirelessly to put an end to the plague that ravages Neverwinter. Go with the blessings of Tyr upon you. Well, Angelo certainly didn't need any tomfoolery or blessings of a god that was maimed, missing an eye, and losing an arm. But he wouldn't say that to a priest. For now, he would carefully walk around the numerous bodies that lined the grounds. The groans at the sick that had initially been unnerving were now fairly normalized. He had grown used to them now. He didn't even flinch at the background noises. If he got the plague, it would be the first time in his life falling ill anyway. As he approached the center of the temple, he would be approached by the Lady Arabeth. I feel like that voice is a little too low. I noticed it earlier too, but since I was doing amateur voice acting, it wasn't as big a deal. Let's see. That can stay. Let's turn down the music a little bit. And bump the voices a little bit.
I am Lady Arabeth de Tilmarand, paladin in the service of Tyr, and the right hand of Nasha Alagondar, Lord of Neverwinter. I have been waiting for you.
Yeah, I think that's better. Let's see. He came as quickly as he could, was delayed by Fenthic. That's pretty funny. Normally, Angelo would be a snide little dick like that and say that, but due to the current circumstances, he's in business mode right now, as it were. So maybe once things have calmed down and leveled out and he knows his job, he'll go back to his sassy ways, but for now, he'd leave that alone. Though he would wonder why on earth she was waiting for him. Yeah, he's one of the only people that survived the academy, but she definitely has better things to do. She could have just asked Fenthic to transfer everything. Though I suppose she would prefer that any information regarding his past be kept between them, so limit his interaction with the rest of the temple. But if she's going to be asking him to help with the cure, he's going to be running around everywhere anyway. That's a little bit too rude. He is quite charming, after all. I don't think he'd say it quite like this, but he would say that he came as quickly as he could.
I have been following your progress since your early training at the academy. Neverwinter has need of one like you if we are to survive the Wailing Death.
Angelo resisting laughter because this is most definitely a front. Certainly, he probably earned some respect due to his incident in the academy, but in the end, he is still a well-known pirate and rogue. Arabeth he would doubt, words are hard, he would doubt that Arabeth, of all people, a paladin of Tyr, of justice and law and order and good, would really be that impressed by the antics of an ex-pirate rogue. But he would keep his little comments to himself for now. Who knows, perhaps she thought she saw some good in him, that perhaps he could be a hero. More likely he would be remembered as such, but in reality he was just a mercenary accepting some money to get his own selfish goals forward.
The attack on the academy doused the one faint spark of hope the city had. I need you to help recover that which we have lost.
As he had assumed, after all, they had lost the cure, and it was partially his fault. Though the idea of keeping the cure regiments in the academy was questionable. In Lord Nash's private chambers would have been a much superior idea, or his treasury. But with some degree of responsibility, he would in fact agree that he needed to help with this. Similarly, of course, he would definitely want to be paid for it. He isn't so stupid as to assume that she was saying she'd be his master or lord over him in some way. But I doubt he would say that it'd be an honor either. He will help for a price.
I promise your reward for this task will be well worth your efforts. There are many rumors about the plague, but if you are to aid me in this, it is important you know the truth about the Wailing Death.
Well now, Angelo's all ears. Both Fenthic and Arabeth have promised that he will be well paid for his actions. Misclick. Don't mind that. And furthermore, she's willing to give him some very likely limited information in regards to the Wailing Death itself.
Our divine healers can do nothing to help those afflicted by the Wailing Death, and even our most powerful magic cannot raise those who succumb to the illness.
The healing is not too uncommon. After all, some diseases are so potent that even powerful healing magic cannot return it. Still, the most powerful spells of the divine can usually remove it. But Angelo does know of some stories and rumors of diseases that divine magic could not deal with. That's why, after all, alchemy still exists and is quite prominent. However, what does catch his attention is the second part of this statement. He was not informed of this in his own information gathering. He had simply assumed that there wasn't a priest with the power to resurrect the dead in this city. He'd, after all, only heard of a very sparse few individuals that had that kind of power. But still, as far as he was aware, raising the dead, should you have access to the divine might to do so, had nothing that could interrupt it besides the will of a divine being interrupting it. Or perhaps, if something that powerful was keeping the soul in question out of the grasp of the spell and the god that it was connected to. Neither one were a favorable option that he liked the sound of.
But a short time ago, we had word that Kelvin Blackstaff Arunson, the famous Archmage of Waterdeep, had discovered a potential cure, one that might be concocted from the essence of 4 rare and magical creatures.
These creatures he had gotten a brief glimpse of and had further studied afterward. A dryad, an intellect devourer, a Yuan-ti, as well as a cockatrice. He was lucky that the cockatrice hadn't looked at him plainly. He didn't favor trying to capture that thing. Very similar to basilisks, cockatrices were incredibly dangerous prey. They were not exactly that powerful, however, their ability could turn anything to stone as long as it was living. Petrification could not simply be undone by one's own self. It took an incredibly powerful scroll or magic user that could remove such a thing. The other 3 weren't nearly as threatening to him. They all had weaknesses that were easily abusable as long as he had the forethought and information regarding their positioning. An intellect devourer were hardy, but as long as he had a magical weapon, he could cleave through its hide with a fair amount of ease, and its brain was an active weak point. As long as he avoided its mental attacks, he'd be fine. Having a cleric or a monk nearby alongside him would greatly ease any threat that the creature posed, as well as simply drinking a potion of clarity and stocking up on them beforehand. A Yuan-ti was technically just another humanoid. He could kill one as easily as he could kill an elf or a human. Usually they were spellcasters and were fairly threatening, but that was nothing new to Angelo. And as far as the dryad, he doubted that the creature actually intended any harm on them in the first place. Dryads were peaceful creatures that, as long as you didn't harm their forest, were usually happy to help. They were good-natured creatures. He doubted he'd have to fight her as much as track her down and provide safety for her, and possibly resist her charms, though he had his own wiles when it came to such things. That could be a fun night, assuming he lived that long and the city didn't burn down around him due to plague and treason. The rest of this is, he wouldn't talk about wasting time. This isn't wasted time, this is information. He'd of course have heard the rumors, but I think he'd get straight to the point. What became of them? Where does he need to look?
Under great secrecy, the 4 creatures were gathered in Waterdeep, then sent here to Neverwinter. As strange a menagerie as any has ever set eyes on. A cockatrice, an intellect devourer, a Yuan-ti, and a dryad. I ordered them sent to the academy, Neverwinter's renowned training institution for adventurers of every ilk. I once studied there myself, and I thought the instructors and students were loyal to Lord Nasher.
And there's that paladin innocence coming through. Though he supposed it could simply be due to her age, but he always found that so many paladins and clerics of good-aligned deities saw the good in everyone, and never thought anything could go wrong, they'd never be betrayed, everything would be fine. Unfortunately, that was not the way of humanoid nature. Everyone had their price, and he was surprised that he wasn't a suspect, honestly. She truly did seem to believe the good in too many people. Or perhaps he was just one of their only few hopes they had left at this point. He wouldn't state the obvious. Clearly she thinks so, and he would agree.
You were there. You saw us unprepared. You are one of only a handful of survivors from the carnage of the Academy.
And he's certain that the ones that did survive are probably of no use now. He did, of course, go back and try to clear out as much as he could, but he didn't find any survivors, and that meant that any that did survive were either rendered unconscious due to injuries, or they managed to escape before it happened and were likely suspects under lock and key.
Fenthic and Dester arrived with reinforcements, but during the confusion of battle, the Waterdavian creatures disappeared into the streets of Neverwinter, and our hopes of a cure vanished with them.
Okay, this might be just the level of sass that he might actually go for. Again, he's not big on the serving. He's not a knight. He's not a hero. He's a mercenary that occasionally will do the right thing. Maybe, if the price is right. Unless the good thing is also a good thing for him, and then he'll jump onto the bait without hesitation. So yeah, I think that's just the right amount of sass.
Your task in this is twofold. First, find the Waterdavian creatures and bring them back to me, at any cost. We need to harvest components from these creatures if we are to concoct a cure for the Wailing Death. This is your most important duty.
Well, if they only need the components, then technically he wouldn't have to capture them. He could just harvest the components themselves. He wondered if that was the next thing on our list, because if not, he felt like that was a better idea. Unless they needed some specialized form of being fresh. But he doubted they needed such. Alchemical ingredients were usually just as good dead as they were alive. Very few high-level spells required elsewise.
Second, we must discover who was behind the attack on the Academy. Any evidence you uncover in this matter should be brought to Fenthic. He is the one assigned the task of unmasking our hidden enemy.
Interesting, but understandable if nothing else. After all, Fenthic was her most trusted advisor in many ways, and, of course, he had the connections of both Tyr and the Hellmites through his supposed friend, Desther. Very well. Made sense that they'd want information on such. But once again, the rewards are required for these things. That would be quite the undertaking to try and investigate a hidden attacker full of mages capable of summoning hundreds of goblins and raising hundreds of skeletons all at once.
Whatever rewards you seek, fame, fortune, glory, you shall have in abundance, provided you are successful in this task.
An incredibly fair offer.
I ask for your discretion in this matter. News of the attack and strange creatures roaming the city will only add to the panic and chaos already in the streets.
As Angelo would naturally wish, but of course, she has to make sure he understands. Many rookies would go around asking about, "Have you ever seen any strange creatures wandering about the city?" to any nearby peasant, and immediately cause an uproar. He certainly didn't need that added to his plate. This job was already becoming much more than he'd originally anticipated when he made the deal with Arabeth so long ago, now that it felt.
To aid you in your task, I will give you this Stone of Recall. You will find it to be a valuable tool in your quest.
Well, that was a potent gift. He wouldn't actually need to ask, but we'll just say she'll explain it as she hands it over, and he'll just let her, by being polite.
You can activate the Stone of Recall at any time, and it will instantly teleport you and anyone in your service back here to the Temple of Tyr. Anytime you go through the teleportation portal in Tyr's temple, it will instantly send you and any companions back to the place your stone was last activated.
And that's the only bit of information Angelo actually needed, was where the portal itself went, as well as where the stone sent him. He understood the concept of a Stone of Recall. You used it as an anchor, attaching to another anchor, and traveled through different planes depending on the spell in question to arrive at the new location at incredibly high speeds. It was a fairly basic concept as far as the magical and arcane teachings he'd been given. What he didn't know was where the other anchor was. Now he knew. If you enjoy my videos and don't want to miss out on future content, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification button. If you would like to support what I do on a more personal level, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.